The least good tanks sometimes are reward, but on an actual, a tanks fan fiction we're gonna go with World of Tanks. The Super Pershing and the T-71 could not be more different. The Super Pershing was a large, heavy-set medium tank that wore extra armor plating. It was much more like a heavy tank than any medium. He had the durability to prove it, capable of absorbing shot after shot in his armored plates. The T-71, on the other hand, is a small but stocky little tank, capable of quickly repositioning and firing off his autoloader. His thin armor meant that he must be in a constant state of alertness if he wishes to thrive in battle. T-71 and Super Pershing were the last ones alive after an intense battle on the train yards of port. They had worked well together and whittled down the enemy one by one. However, there was still an opponent alive, an IS-8. Over the course of the battle, IS-8 had managed to destroy 4 allies quite easily, without being penetrated once. IS-8 was much like IS-7, well-sloped armor with a rounded effective turret. She, however, was much faster than IS-7, but she had to sacrifice some armor to do it. Nevertheless, her armor was sufficient to deflect the guns of Tier 8 tanks. Super Pershing and T-71 had to be really cautious if they wanted to best a much stronger foe. The IS-8 was not spotted for quite some time. With her ability to quickly relocate, the Russian could pop up anywhere. Super Pershing insisted that they dig in and defend, forcing IS-8 to come to them, or expose her position by trying to capture the base of questionable tactical worth. T-71 knew that IS-8 would easily pick them apart if she cornered them. He needed Super Pershing to act as bait, so that the little scout could unload his autoloader clip into her softer rear armor. While Super Pershing was not crazy about such an idea, he knew it was the only idea that had a chance of success. T-71 moved up to the railway, lying in cover ready to perform his pincer strategy once IS-8 engaged his sluggish comrade. T-71 tucked himself in between the rail cars and waited impatiently. The game rested on him being able to catch IS-8 off guard. Any kind of mistake would result in failure. Super Pershing moved forward on a very obvious route, hoping to get spotted, an idea he was not crazy about. Then it all went wrong. T-71 saw the brick wall crumble. In the split second it took him to realize what was going on. IS-8 rushed towards him. The Russian smashed the little scout in rusty metal cistern. The back of his little turret hit the tanker with an audible clang and snap. T-71 felt his oscillating turret snap out of its sockets. He desperately began firing off his clip. Due to his damaged turret, his first 2 shells sailed over IS-8's turret, while the third glanced off her turret cheek, leaving a long, ugly scratch. This seemed to enrage IS-8, and with a surprising amount of horsepower, she smashed T-71's turret with her 120mm wrist guard repeatedly. Such a violent and crude assault, smashing the little tank's armor inward and bending his gun barrel at an odd angle. IS-8 was about to finish off our little scout with a shell from her 122mm M62 T2. This was going to be a brutal destruction for such a small tank. However, as luck would have it, an explosion at the back of the IS-8's turret caused her to drop T-71 and stagger forward. Super Pershing had loaded an HE shell and smashed the back of her turret. IS-8 regained her balance and turned to face a now much less confident American. IS-8 shifted her gears and ran at Super Pershing, who bounced several desperately aimed shots off her angled armor. She smashed into Super Pershing. The clang and grind of metal was deafening. While they did weigh roughly the same, IS-8 has superior horsepower per ton, so she was easily able to overpower the stocky medium. She smashed her elbow plate dead center on Super Pershing's mantle, knocking him to the ground. Using those strong mechanical Russian legs, IS-8 kicked him in his weak sides. The repeated blows to his sides got more frequent. The clang and crack of his side armor falling filled the still, barely operational T-71 with dread, his radio systems picking up the brutal grind of metal on metal. T-71 could not help his comrade. He felt utterly helpless. His entire team was silently looking upon him in post-mortem ghost tanks. He couldn't defend himself, much less his team member. He was useless. IS-8 had stopped smashing Super Pershing and began to take aim for his weak armor points, when she noticed something. The damaged American lay on the ground whimpering, trying to cover his turret from any more blows. He looked absolutely pathetic. A rather heavy-set tank now lying on the ground, trying in desperation to stop the pain. This seemed to stir something within IS-8. Whether it was remorse or some other more complex feeling, she stopped aiming. The slender Russian heavy kneeled down, taking the now mortified Super Pershing's hand. IS-8 interlocked her slender fingers with the medium, while slightly resisting at first. Super Pershing was far too weak and fearful to care. With her other hand, she gently touched where she had so aggressively kicked Super Pershing. This enticed a jolt from the American as that area was damaged and sore. IS-8 quickly pulled back, now far too caring about his physical state after mercilessly attacking him earlier. In a sort of apologetic action, IS-8 put her hand on his chest plate. She drew in closer, eventually laying down and gently placing her turret cheek on his rather broad armor plate. She lay there slowly stroking Super Pershing's upper plate. The American even more afraid than ever as he assumed that any wrong move could incite a violent reaction from IS-8. She seemed to teeter on the edge, having several deep-seated issues. Being able to rapidly switch demeanor like that, IS-8 has shown being perfectly capable of easily taking apart and destroying Super Pershing, so he had to not entice her. However, he decided to gingerly place his hand on her smooth turret cheek. IS-8 shifted slightly, and our American friend assumed he had just made a grave mistake. He braced himself for a blow, but it never came. Instead, IS-8 shifted forward, pushing her turret towards his hand. Super Pershing slowly ran his palm along her smooth, rounded turret. IS-8's smooth Russian steel felt good under his hand. It helped take Super Pershing's mind off his injuries and damaged systems. Both the enemy and allied team looked upon this in confusion, communicating orders and expressing their disdain for any peaceful conduct. None of this mattered to IS-8 as she disabled her battle interface, looking upon Super Pershing as just another tank. IS-8 lay on top of the American. She didn't know why she had done this, but for now she felt happy. Super Pershing was feeling rather conflicted as well, mainly because of what IS-8 was doing with her leg. She had nice, thick thighs that were mostly covered in angled and sloped armor plating. Her inner thigh, however, was exposed, and the softer, flexible material was rubbing across Super Pershing's groin area. Whether she did this on purpose or subconsciously, it was driving him crazy, and he had to shift side to side, attempting to stop his erection. However, as Super Pershing shifted, his rock-hard cock brushed against IS-8's thighs, causing the Russian to pause and look down. IS-8 had to stifle a laugh. She had made him hard even after she beat him. IS-8 decided since Super Pershing had been such a good sport, she would reward him a little. IS-8 reached down and grabbed his cock, slowly stroking it to see how the American would react. Bear in mind, by this point, both teams were appalled, and many prayed to Overlord Serb to end this sin. Super Pershing shook as she started to jerk faster. Working his shaft in a circular motion, she would periodically stop to work his cock head with her palm. Her smooth, rhythmic motions drove Super Pershing closer. He attempted to push along with her motions, but that caused sharp pains in his side, where IS-8 had previously brutalized him. All this time, T-71 had a direct radio feed to what was happening, so you can imagine the confusion and rage he felt when he found out his teammate and the enemy were soliciting. In the meantime, IS-8 continued to work Super Pershing over. She had an awful lot of experience with these kinds of things, it seemed, as he was already close to orgasm. IS-8, not being one to tease, felt she should reward her opponent. She jerked his twitching shaft with more intensity as he came closer and closer. Super Pershing felt his body tighten and warmth build up deep inside him. Ice-Age gripped his cock tightly and jerked rhythmically. Super Pershing bucked forward, squirting up into the air, moaning as she jerked along with his rival. But when the final spurt of cum dribbled out, Ice-Age slowed down as Super Pershing rested on the ground panting. Ice-Age had left him drained, but satisfied, and she hoped it would be adequate compensation for the beating. She walked over into the cap unopposed by either American tanks. A shameful victory for all involved. Thank you for watching. Please check out my other videos. There are also things. If you want to watch a random fanfiction video, click up in the top right corner. If you want to watch a video that has nothing to do with my channel, click in the bottom left corner. If you want to buy shirts and shit, click up in the top left corner. Bye.